I've owned my ranch for over 15 years, long before the cookie-cutter HOA neighborhood popped up down the road with its matching mailboxes and power-hungry board members. My land sits just outside their boundary line, legally surveyed, fenced, and documented more times than I can count. That never stopped the HOA president, Linda, from insisting my cattle lowered property values, or that my private access road was somehow community land. I ignored the letters. I ignored the fines they couldn't legally issue. What I didn't expect was for them to escalate into something straight out of a bad crime show. It happened just after sunset on a Thursday. I was finishing chores when two black SUVs rolled up my driveway, lights flashing red and blue, but something felt off immediately. The light bars were cheap, uneven, and the vehicles had no county markings. 4 men stepped out wearing generic tactical vests with patches that simply read, "Police." No department name, no badge numbers I could see. One of them shouted that I was trespassing on HOA-managed land and that they had authority to remove me immediately. I stayed calm and asked for a warrant. The officer smirked and said HOA emergency provisions allowed them to bypass warrants. That's when I knew this wasn't just intimidation, it was impersonation. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The man closest to me suddenly got nervous and ordered me to put the phone down. I refused. He reached for his radio, pretended to receive instructions, and told me I was being detained. Over HOA rules. On my own ranch, I made one call. Not to a lawyer, not to 911. I called my cousin. Now, I don't usually drop names or favors, but there's a reason I wasn't scared. My cousin has been the elected sheriff of this county for the last 2 terms. He knows this land. He grew up riding horses on it. When I told him there were men on my property claiming to be police, his voice went cold. He told me to keep recording and said he'd be there in 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt long. The fake cops started whispering to each other, clearly debating whether they should leave. Linda, the HOA president, finally showed up in her luxury SUV, smiling like she'd already won. She announced that the HOA board had voted to reclaim misused land, and thanked the officers for their cooperation. I asked her, on camera, if she had hired these men. She laughed and said, "We're allowed to protect our community." That's when real sirens echoed down the road. Part 2. A marked county sheriff's truck pulled in, followed by 2 deputies. The mood shifted instantly. The fake cops stiffened, standing a little too straight. My cousin stepped out slowly, scanned the scene, and locked eyes with me. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "You okay, cousin?" The silence was deafening. He turned to the men in tactical vests and asked for their names, badge numbers, and department affiliation. One of them tried to explain they were contracted security acting under HOA authority. My cousin cut him off and asked why they were using police lights, police insignia, and threatening arrest. He informed them, very calmly, that impersonating law enforcement is a felony in this state. Linda started shouting that this was all a misunderstanding and that the HOA had rights. My cousin asked her if she had authorized these men to act as police. She hesitated. That hesitation was enough. One of the fake officers tried to quietly step back toward the SUV. A deputy stopped him and told him to put his hands where they could see them. Within minutes, the entire situation flipped. The men were detained. Their vehicles were searched. The light bars were seized. Linda was read her rights for conspiracy and filing false authority claims. Turns out, this wasn't the first time the HOA had tried something like this. They'd sent these same men to intimidate another landowner months earlier, but that person had backed down. By the end of the night, 3 arrests were made. The HOA's emergency enforcement budget was officially evidence. My cousin told me quietly that the county prosecutor would love this case. Fake cops, illegal detainment, abuse of authority. It was a legal nightmare for them. A week later, the HOA board was dissolved pending investigation. Linda resigned for personal reasons. I received a formal apology letter and a written acknowledgement confirming my property rights, signed, stamped, and notarized. The ranch hasn't been bothered since. Funny thing is, if they'd just left me alone, none of this would have happened. But they chose intimidation. They chose fake badges. And they chose to forget one very important thing. This was the sheriff's county, and I was family.